there, Wolfpack Nation. It's me again, Kenton Gibbs, bringing you another episode of Locked On Wolfpack. And folks, I told you, this week I'm not playing games. I'm not hiding faces until I feel comfortable showing them to you because this is Clemson week. This is not the time to be playing around and dilly-dallying. We need you to know up front what's going on. And I got my main man, Andrew Snicker, in the building to talk some NC State football against Clemson because this game, absolutely massive. Two top 10 teams. College game day is going to be there. Lee Corso is probably going to ask for some type of mascot head or something like that. We got to get into it. Are you ready, Schnitty?
I am ready.
All righty. Well, stick around while we talk all the things that concern us, all the things that excite us, all the things that the Wolfpack win if and Clemson wins if on today's episode of Locked On Wolfpack.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Schnitty, we're here today talking about a top 10 matchup, an undefeated matchup, a matchup that is going to be very important to not just the conference landscape, but potentially the national landscape. You know, we had a similar game in the Triangle last week in Duke taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. Two undefeated programs. Very storied basketball. Wait. We're in football season. Anyway, we've got to talk about this game because let's start here. Do you feel like this game is the biggest in NC State history? Because there's some people who are saying, oh, well, it's an important game, but there will be more important games down the road, and there have been more. And I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that, but what say you?
I think I'm definitely willing to call it the biggest game in my lifetime. Certainly the biggest since I've been, heavily following NC State. I mean, you look at, like you just mentioned, all the stakes for this game. The winner of this game, especially with Clemson beating Wake Forest last week, is going to be in the driver's seat to win the Atlantic Division, although Florida State may or may not have something to say about that. Mm-hmm. NC State has not won an ACC championship since 1979. That's the main goal for this team, is getting to Charlotte and getting that first ACC title under Dave Doran. And you are more than likely not going to be able to do that without a win in Death Valley. Again, you talked about it already, but you look at the stage, college game day, primetime ACC, top 10 matchup for the first time in program history ever. That has never happened for NC State, playing a game where both teams are ranked in the top 10. So, I mean, I think when you look at all those factors combined in terms of both the stage of the game and what's at stake, I'm willing to call it the biggest, especially when you consider now what we have today that there hasn't been, and maybe, because you'd have to go back pretty far to find a game that you could make an argument is bigger than this one.
Right.
Factor in now, the college football playoff is a thing. So if the winner of this game goes undefeated and wins the ACC, very good chance that they're going to the college football playoff. So, I know that may not be, that may be the kind of talk that might spook some NC State fans, but it's all on the table on Saturday, man. This is huge. It can't be overstated how big this is.
I'll tell you what, the winner of this game would have to completely and utterly piss down their leg for the rest of the season to not get to the playoff, because whoever wins this game, right? Let's look at it from both sides of this thing, okay? Starting with NC State. If NC State wins this game, you end up in a situation where I think they'll jump up to – depending on how they win.
Maybe.
I was just about to say, because it's, the polls are very subjective. You got the coaches, you got the media, all that good stuff. You jump up depending on how you win. Because if you win in dominant fashion, you get to number 4. You get to number 5 right away. No offense or what's about that. But if you squeak by and it looks like just DJ had a terrible game and that's how you got by here, you move up to about 5, 6, maybe 7. Maybe 7 at the back end of this thing. But from there, you have the rest of the ACC schedule ahead of you where, I mean, let's just be honest. There are certain teams in the ACC right now that have records that are much better than that team actually is. We have some undefeated teams that I am not sure about in any way, shape, form, or fashion in the Atlantic. There are multiple of them. So you look at those teams and you say, okay, if you win this game in Death Valley, the next game that you're probably going to have to, that's going to be like you have to get this done. I'm going to just be honest, and I love my boy Tally Drake. I'm going to have him on the show next week to talk Florida State. I don't believe in the nose. I don't think, a lot of people aren't going to want to hear that. I don't believe in that team at any level whatsoever. People tend to forget they were one made extra point and a potential overtime loss away from leaving Norvell in Baton Rouge. Like, let's stop playing like this is a team that everybody was behind and fully was believing in. Syracuse, very similar thing. Dino Babers' seat was hotter than fish grease in the middle of a 4th of July cookout. You understand? This man's seat was burning up. And now all of a sudden, because you beat Purdue after they racked up about 30 yards of penalties after a touchdown, people are now like, oh, yeah, this is a good team. Schrader's a good quarterback. Pump your brakes. Pump your brakes. So with that being said, this NC State team going forward, they would be in essence in the driver's seat. I think that's fair to say. They would be in the driver's seat in terms of not only just where you are in the conference, but also in the national conversation. You have an inside track on everybody in terms of in the ACC. If you beat Clemson, you've got the inside track there. Now, on Clemson's side of this thing, if they are to win this game, congratulations. For as bad as everybody said the ACC is, you got a top 10 win out of this thing after just beating another top 25 team last week. And those are potentially the two best teams in the Atlantic that are not you. Or maybe even, again, if you throw in Florida State, which I wouldn't, but if you are to throw in Florida State, you have one more game against a team potentially that can, throw some smoke in there and mess things up for you. That's it. Because you've already played the two big timers at that point in the season. So let me start here with this. This game, we've talked about the magnitude of it. We've talked about the reality of what we're looking at in terms of, how important this game is. But what do you think it takes for Clemson to get a win here? What do you think is the reality if you look up and say at the end of the day, Clemson won this game, right? If somebody just showed you, you somehow end up in a coma, you wake up tomorrow, see the final score, and it's, Clemson more points than NC State, whatever there. How would you believe that game panned out?
Well, number one, I think you'd have to look at the defensive side of the ball for Clemson and the offensive side for NC State. Devin Leary has not really looked like what we expected so far this season. I'm not going to say he was pretty bad against ECU. He's made some throws, but if Clemson, they can get after him, they can get pressure on him, they can continue to make Devin Leary just uncomfortable. He just hasn't looked comfortable. Make him force some throws, make him rush through his progressions, lock down his receivers. Biggest thing, I think, if you're looking at what this NC State team has done, especially in the bigger games, in the games against more competitive teams than the other two they played in non-conference, we'll say against ECU and Texas Tech, is take away Thayer Thomas. He's kind of been that, security blanket, big go-to target when NC State's needed to move the chains thus far. And then on the other side of the ball, I think you saw that was probably, especially when you factor in not having the Travis Etienne security blanket that he had in those two games that he played when Trevor Lawrence had COVID, easily the best game we've seen DJ Uiagalelei play last week against Wake Forest. So I think, that'd be the other side of it. If he can, make some big throws, find some holes in NC State's coverage, because do we know, is Tyler Baker-Williams playing in this game?
I believe so, but I could be wrong.
If he were to be out, that'd be a big thing, for Clemson to be able to attack the middle of that NC State secondary. But that's part of it. Hit some shots downfield. Keep DJ protected, keep that NC State pass rush from getting after him, which is what he likes. And also run the football with a little more effectiveness than you've seen teams do against NC State, because I think part of what's made this NC State defense so effective, especially with the pass rush and the secondary, is that they're so good at stuffing the run on early downs and forcing teams into 3rd and long. So I think that'd be something too for Clemson when you look at that Clemson offense against this NC State defense is either throw early because you know you're not going to be able to run, or find a way to run effectively on early downs, getting some 3rd and shorts, and take NC State's defense out of that kind of script that we've seen that it wants to establish and has done a pretty good job of doing so far.
Absolutely. I think that if I were to look up and say, that Clemson won this game, and I don't know how, but I'm going to guess how. I'm going to guess that they limited Demi Sumo in terms of yards after contact, because that man is a machine. You know, he's like he's not shaped like a pinball. He doesn't have the shape that you think of. When you think of a pinball running back, you normally think of like a Maurice Jones-Drew, a short, stocky guy, a T.A. McClendon for Wolfpack fans. That type of figure where even if they are taller, it's still a very big, like wide, menacing presence. Demi isn't necessarily that, but he does a great job of contact balance. He does a great job of, one guy ain't going to get him down. That just ain't going to be the way that this thing works out 9 times out of 10. And so if those linebackers from Clemson, though, I thought Niskalski and the other guy from last year were good. And the guys from this year said, we're better. Yeah. We are better. Listen, we are in the words of Homelander, they are bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, better. They are better. They just are. And so I think that they would have to play a big factor into this. And also, the Wolfpack would have to get off to a slow start. I have a very strong theory about this game that I am willing to bet my house on, but we'll talk about it right after this break. And speaking of betting, I got to talk to you all about betonline.net. BetOnline is your number one source for all your football sports betting this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. So here's my theory, okay? Here's my theory about this game. I very secretly believe, or actually not secretly, because I've talked about it multiple times, so if that was the case, it's probably one of the world's worst kept secrets. But I have a very strong belief that, like, DJ is looking over his shoulder. And not only is DJ looking over his shoulder, I think the fans are looking over DJ's shoulder for him. And if this Wolfpack team, and this is going to segue into what I'm going to ask you next year. I think if we look up and this Wolfpack team wins this game, I think one of the first things that we're going to see is that they got DJ playing poorly early, and he never quite recovered. I think that's going to be a key here, because when you see the Wake Forest game, even with them jumping out to, what was it, a 14-0 lead? Was it 14 zipper? Okay, even with Clemson jumping out to a 14-0 lead and scoring on their first 2 drives, there were still moments where you felt like DJ wasn't quite confident in himself, where things looked a little off. So if you make him struggle early, we saw it against a Georgia Tech team that we didn't realize how bad they were. We did not realize how bad that Georgia Tech team was coming into this season. And we saw an immense struggle through the first 2.5, 3 quarters to where it was like, are they going to bring in Cade? Like, this is looking rough. So I think if this Wolfpack team makes it tough on them early, makes that confidence rattle a little bit, makes those fans in Death Valley maybe boo a little bit, maybe you get a couple chants for Cade or something start up, I think it's all over but the crying at that point.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you get DJ in his own head, especially with how good that, like, let's be honest, NC State's defense is a pretty big step above Wake Forest defense in terms of what they can do to affect the quarterback and how they can. I mean, I said this the other day, but this is crazy to think about. Just knowing, where they've come from in a relatively short time, NC State may have the best secondary in the ACC.
Hey, listen, I was talking about this the other day, and I said, the Achilles heel of this defense for so long was like, throw up a jump ball. Their corners will panic. They'll blow it. They'll find a way to blow it. They'll be in perfect position. They'll be in phase. They'll be right where they need to be. They'll be under the receiver's armpit, and they will find a way to not make the play. They'll find this year. Oh no more of that. No more of that. So Schnitty, if you were to look up, and this NC State team has won the game, what are some things or a thing that you would look at and say? And again, this is just, you woke up the next day, don't know what happened, but you see the score, you see NC State won. How would you assume that it happened?
Well, number one, again, look at the defensive side of the ball. I would think their playmakers stepped up and make some plays. Somebody or maybe multiple somebodies from that linebacker trio of Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson, and Isaiah Moore. Because remember, Peyton Wilson didn't get to play in the win over Clemson last year. He's going to be highly, highly motivated for this one, I think. I think they got into the script they wanted. They stopped the run on early downs. They were able to get after DJ, make him uncomfortable, have some good coverage to take away his options. But more than anything, I think on the offense, it's just that Devin Leary got going. He had that, that moment, that game, that performance that we've been expecting to see. Because really, if he comes out and he delivers a statement performance against Clemson and NC State beats Clemson because of it, we are never going to remember or talk about the fact that he struggled against ECU and Texas Tech ever again.
No,
we're just not.
No. It won't be a thought. Not at all.
So, I think that's the biggest thing. We need the Devin Leary we saw last year, making really all the throws, the short throws, the deep throws. And we need some guy but the other thing Devin Leary needs is he needs some guys to step up at receiver, get open, make some plays on the outside, because I think what we saw from Wake last week is kind of the way to get after this Clemson defense is to attack those outside corners. So he needs, somebody other than Thayer Thomas in the slot to step up. And even though it was UConn, I think we saw some positive developments last week in terms of Devin Carter finally getting going a little bit. He had been pretty much invisible for the first 3 weeks. If that chemistry, that timing is down between him and Devin Leary and Carter, who, by the way, if you guys remember, had a monster game against Clemson last year, made a couple of huge touchdown catches, including the game winner. And then the other one, again, is a guy that you and I have talked about on this podcast before, Porter Rooks. First touchdown of his college career, had a pretty good day. So I think, if they can get him a little bit more, him and Devin Carter a little bit more involved on the outside, so it's not just, kind of Thayer Thomas over the middle being your main target. They give Leary some more options, and he steps up with one of those signature games like we saw from him last year. I think NC State has a very good chance to win this.
Absolutely. And with the receivers that you're talking about and the outside guys, a guy that has been, and this is one of the guys that, like, his play has shown me like that Devin Leary has struggled this year. Anthony Smith, every time he goes deep, he's stacking these corners like it's nothing. Like he's making it look easy. There was a pass, literally either the play before or maybe two plays before, Demi Sumo fumbled at the one. There was a play that Anthony Smith was on a go route, and he literally perfectly stacked his corner. Gave Devin Leary tons of room in terms of if he puts the ball in front of him, puts the ball over his shoulder, puts the ball even to the inside. As long as that thing has enough air on it to get over the defensive back, as Katie did at the doorstep, strike up the band, time to play the fight song. The ball was slightly underthrown, and a defender from Texas Tech that was beat was able to get his hand in last second. Boom. You go ahead and get yourself a pass breakup and what should have been a touchdown. If this team, and also Keon Lassane caught his first ever touchdown for the red and white in last game. So if this team, last game was very similar to what we saw to Devin Leary for the most part for last year, right? Yes, Emeka Emezi was the guy. He was the big dog on the block, but there was a good distribution of where the ball was going. Like, yes, Emeka was, the RPO guy, and he was always going to be there with reliable, wherever you need him to be, he's going to catch the ball, big, strong, physical guy, not a ton of separation, but he's going high point the football and make something happen for you. Sure. But you also had Thayer, and you also had Devin, and so other than that one pass that turned into an interception, Devin Leary looked really good last week. And of course, UConn is an unserious outfit. Me and you could probably go out there and get a sack or two against them. Actually, not probably. I can guarantee we can get a sack against UConn. I'm no doubt about that. If me and you ran a text game, we could for sure get home. But that's another story for another time. With that being said, if this team is to do what they want to do in terms of the big goals, it's the age-old question of how do you eat a chicken nugget? One bite at a time. How do you eat an elephant? Same thing, one bite at a time. Now, this is a damn big bite. Going down into Death Valley and coming away with a win is a big bite. That's a big chew right there. Hey, you know what I mean? You might have to do a little hoffing like you just got it off the grill at the cookout. But with that being said, I think that this is a team that can definitely get this job done. And we're about to land this thing, and we'll be back in just a second with our predictions. But before we do, I've got to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. Folks, LinkedIn Jobs is here to save the day as the economy gets back going somewhat, and as we're looking into how to help out small businesses where every hire can feel like a wager for your entire business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. And that's why you check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So make sure that you make sure that you turn your profile to purple hiring frame for your LinkedIn and spread the word that you're hiring. Use simple tools like screening questions to make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience that you want to talk to. And make sure that you know that this is why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Now, before I get you out of here, okay, I see you got your Kansas City Chiefs shirt on, and everybody who knows Schnitty knows the man's a huge Chiefs fan, huge Chiefs fan, huge Kansas City sports fan. You know, me and Schnitty, we're good during most seasons, but during baseball season, both of our teams suck right now. Yes, both of our teams suck right now. We know that. We know. Okay. But right now, we're enjoying watching Salvador Perez do his thing. We're enjoying watching Miggy do his thing. We're enjoying watching our guys do their thing a little bit. But that's another story for another time. Patrick Mahomes is great under pressure, so I'm going to put you under a little bit of pressure. Give me your prediction. What is the final score of this game? Because we've talked about what happens and who wins and how they win. What do you think will actually happen? Who do you think wins this game?
I'm going NC State 27, Clemson 20.
Interesting. You heard it here first, folks. So we got 1-1. Brett Friedlander picked Clemson to win. Schnitty picked NC State to win. And don't worry, I'm gonna settle the tie. Y'all go hear tomorrow morning pregame who I think is gonna take this thing home. All right. Thank you so very much for coming out, Schnitty. Tell the folks where they can find your work.
Yeah, you can find all my coverage of local sports here in Wilson, as long with some coverage of the ACC schools in ECU at thewilsontimes.com. We've actually just launched our own podcast there at Wilson Times. It's called Nash and Pine Sports Chat. You can find that anywhere you go to get your podcasts. And then, of course, you can find my incoherent ramblings on any number of subjects on my Twitter handle, which is on the screen in front of you if you're watching. If you're just listening, it's at ASCHNITT53.
I'm going to tell you, Schnitty is one of my favorite sports journalism follows because actually, Schnitty is actually my friend. So it's not really a sports journalism follow so much as it's like, oh, this is a guy I know. He's cool. I follow. But with that being said, of sports journalist Twitter, Schnitty is one of my favorites because it's not like, you don't get that feel where it's like, oh boy, this person's tweeting to make sure the company's happy. Gross. Like he calls it like it is. He says what he feels. He doesn't dance unless he hears music. He won't scratch his head unless it itches. And that, my friends, is what makes for an absolutely great Twitter page. That and a little bit of crap posting about your favorite and worst things. But that's another story for another time as well. Anywho, thank you all so very much for coming out, Wolfpack Nation. I will drop the position by position breakdowns tomorrow. It's going to be a long day before the game, so pace yourselves, okay? Pace yourselves. I know that y'all done already bought up all the liquor and hunkered down for the hurricane, but pace yourselves for tomorrow, all right? Peace and love, y'all, and as always, go Pack.
are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.